Okay, we're live. Good evening and welcome to the second live show of Xplorers Secrets of the Truth. As always, I'm joined by my esteemed colleague, Les Sinkavich. Tonight we plan on talking about a creature that is near and dear to Les's heart. And we will get to that subject shortly. But first, how are you doing tonight, Les?
Hey, buddy, I am doing fantastic. Thanks for asking. And thank you, everybody who is joining us tonight. We hope you enjoy the show. And I want to apologize for all the technical issues that we had last week. That was, again, this is our maiden voyage. We're not used to this application, this software yet. So, again, we apologize for the cutouts last week. Hopefully, fingers crossed, we don't have any of that this time. Right, my friend?
Hopefully not. Really hoping not, because getting the show started tonight was quite the experience.
Yeah, I was having camera issues. I couldn't get my camera to work, and what was it, 3 minutes before the show started, it finally popped up. So
yes.
We're on a flippin' roll. All right.
So, Les, let's just do a quick update, recap of what we've been doing for the past 2 years. You know, Les and I have been building and working on a team of investigators that, offer different perspectives on investigations, not just in the paranormal, but in cryptozoology and, just the greater mysteries of life. So,
Yes.
Les?
Well, let's not forget that, as we discussed last week, it's been a while since we've had our well, I guess we were doing podcasts before, pre-recorded podcasts. It's been a while since we did that, and we talked about this last week to give a little bit of an update of what we've been doing. We've been doing a lot of paranormal investigating. We've also been doing, looking into a lot of different eyewitness encounters with cryptid creatures, Bigfoot. God, what were some of the other ones? Some creepy little creature thing that somebody saw in a field or something. I don't remember the specifics. But anyways, we went on a few Bigfoot investigations, you and I and a couple of the younger kids we took out in the old stomping grounds. We're going to talk about that later. At the end of the show, we're going to talk about some personal experiences. But we've been doing a lot of the paranormal research, particularly in Gettysburg, which was what our show kind of revolved around last week, was getting people, up to snuff with what we've been up to and some of the investigations we did in the Gettysburg and Harrisburg areas. We tested out new equipment, tried new members, and aside from the new gear that we got for hunting ghosts, we also got some new gear for hunting monsters. So some of the stuff that we talked about last week that would kind of go hand in hand with the paranormal and I guess cryptozoological creatures is I had mentioned trail cams that we use. Primarily, we use them when people would say that they saw a Bigfoot or some kind of unknown creature or whatever. We'd go out into certain locations. We'd put out several trail cams to try and catch stuff while we're not there, in hopes that we when there's no human involvement, even though we did leave something behind, it's very small. And when it sits out there for a while, the scent becomes familiar. They know it's not, going to harm them with any animal, not just, unknowns. But, we use the trail cams for catching Bigfoot. And we also, or not just Bigfoot in particular, but, whatever's out there. And we also use them.
Squirrels.
Yeah, squirrels. Yeah, squirrels, raccoons, and deer primarily. And freaking cats. But we also have been using them for the paranormal side of things too, and it aids in, rather than having a static cam that's running 24/7 throughout your investigation. It's nice having the trail cams because they only are based off of motion, and some are based off heat and whatever they sense, and it only record so many seconds or minutes, depending on what kind of camera you have. Of the subject or whatever triggered it, mostly wind and branches, but and the animals we described before. But aside from that, one of the other tools that we picked up, and I'll explain later on in the show as to why I was interested in getting this, is a bionic ear, which again this transfers swimmingly between paranormal and cryptozoological investigating, is basically a device that amplifies the sounds around you up to several hundred yards away from you. It could be hooked up to a digital recorder for EVPs or just regular recording. So it's kind of cool having that. That's something that I really like.
That's definitely something I'm excited about getting to use. There's a lot of times when you're in places or you're out in the woods and you're hearing stuff. It'd be nice to have that just extra bit of audio that you can get a clearer sound to it. Right. Even in the paranormal end of it, just getting a cleaner, live sound as you're doing stuff. You're hearing that popping, that clacking, whatever it may be. You're getting a better, clearer recording of it.
Well, I'll indulge a little bit. Remember the one time we were back at the my old place and we heard those faint whoops, or what we thought sounded kind of like whoops? This is perfect device to get that sound. Do you want to talk about one of the other things we talked a little bit last week, were the POV glasses, and you're the proud owner of a set of those, so do you want to break down that a little bit?
Yeah, the POV glasses are nice. We had discussed them as a paranormal investigation tool, but the nice thing is you have 3 sets of lenses. You can use them as sunglasses. They have an amber set of lenses and they have a clear set of lenses, which is nice if you're out hiking around. You're in your research area. As you're hiking around, you're focused maybe on the trail that you're walking on or the woods ahead of you. These are shooting, a spectrum around you that is going to catch things maybe moving or, that maybe you're not paying attention to.
Right.
And if you happen to walk up on something, it's not that, I got to get my camera up here to film it. You're already looking at it. You're filming it.
Yep.
So it's definitely a tool to be used.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a lot more affordable than GoPros, which I don't think GoPros have night vision capability. Now, I never really looked into them wholeheartedly just because of the expense, but
yeah, I don't know. I think some people have played with them and have definitely maybe created a full spectrum version of it.
Yeah.
But I don't know if they're sold, as a full spectrum unit.
Yeah. Well, if they ever pick up night vision, I want one.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
So one of the things I know you and I had talked about before, and I know you recently ordered this, these pheromone chips. Can you maybe go into a little bit about those?
Well, it was something that I had seen a long time ago on a TV show that people were using these pheromone chips to try, for Bigfoot or Sasquatch in particular, they were trying to use those to lure said creature in. And from what I've read, I didn't get them yet, but from what I understand, they are insanely potent and pungent, and it's a mix between great ape and human female pheromones to try, and I guess when they're in heat, if you will, to try and lure in if a Sasquatch is in fact a primate or whatever. Hopefully that scent would lure them in, and we could set them up near our trail cams and our game cams and whatnot, and try and kind of get them in to get in a view. So once they come in and we get the chance to go out and test them, we'll let everybody know what kind of luck we had with it. And also, and you and I have already used this next device, if you remember. It was like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning in the middle of nowhere, and we ended up getting like every coyote and dog in the neighborhood. We got a call blaster, and we not only have run sounds of known species through it, we also downloaded supposed Sasquatch sounds through different areas of the country. and we tried using them to maybe try and get entice a call back. And a while back, I had spoke to another researcher, Melissa Hovey, who I find her knowledge to be very, very wealthy. She suggested using a baby crying, that the sounds of human children tend to sometimes lure in Bigfoot to it piques their curiosity more or less. And I don't know if it's like a maternal instinct, that lures in a female, and supposedly the males are more attracted to the sound of children. I don't know what the connection is there, but that just seems to be what people notice, or they say they notice. So we try that as well. As of yet, nothing really major to report. But we'll, like with everything else, whatever we find, we're going to let everybody know about. We always post it either on Facebook or to our YouTube page or channel, whatever you want to call that. So yeah, we'll keep everybody posted.
And also, folks,
go ahead,
folks. Just to let you know, you can stay connected with us live during the show by using the chat features. If you have any questions on anything we're talking about, shoot us a message. One of us will try to get an answer together as we're doing the show for you. And let's get into the our featured creature for this evening, Les.
Yes.
Tell the audience all about the cryptid we'll be covering tonight.
Oh, well, they go by so many names, but the most familiar is Bigfoot and/or Sasquatch. Funny thing about the Bigfoot creature is it's just not found. Most people know the Bigfoot or the Sasquatch primarily in the Pacific Northwest. That's where you hear most of the stories about them. That's where a lot of this originated. But it's actually reported all over the country. You have down in Florida, you have the skunk ape, you have the grassman of Ohio. There's reports of large bipedal primates all over the world. I mean, you have the Yeti of the Himalayas, the Yowie of Australia, the Yaren of China, the Almasty of Russia, the Almas of Mongolia, and there's even reports of a Littlefoot, if you will, a small bipedal creature named the Orang Pendek, which is in Sumatra. And the list goes on and on. I mean, they're all over the world, if you didn't already know.
Yeah. So, what is Bigfoot, Les? I've heard, different theories over the years. Let's, maybe enlighten the audience and, let them know about a few of the theories.
That's a good question. Oh, and just to give everybody a heads up, stick with us. Later on in the show, we're going to actually be talking about personal experiences that Chad and I had, and I've had, and other people had throughout our local area. Well, more mine because you moved away from me, you dirty bugger, you. But back home in Pennsylvania, we had some experiences. We're going to talk about them later on in the show, so stick with us. Don't go anywhere. That's coming up later. But to get to your point, my friend, what is Bigfoot, also known as Sasquatch? It is a cryptid creature, or a member of cryptozoology, which is the study of unknown creatures. It's supposedly a simian-like or monkey-like creature of American folklore that is said to inhabit forests, especially in the Pacific Northwest, which is where most of the stories originated. Bigfoot is usually described as like a large, hairy, bipedal humanoid. The term Sasquatch is an anglicized derivative of the, I'm going to butcher the name of these people. Holcomellum, I believe. The word is Sasquet. I think I pronounced that right. Those people, the Holcomen is a language of various First Nations people in the British Columbia area. But back to the topic. Scientists like to discount the existence of Bigfoot and consider it to be a combination of folklore, misidentification, or just a plain old hoax, rather than a living animal. They note the lack of physical evidence after centuries of investigations, despite the fact that numerous creatures would have to exist in order to maintain like a breeding population. However, there continues to be reports from all over the world that would claim otherwise. There are new species of large and small animals, being discovered every day, and to write it off as folklore, it may not be the wisest decision. I mean, it was not long ago that the lowland mountain gorilla was just a tribal legend of the bush people in the Congo, and of a large, hairy, man-like wild man that lived in the jungle, and it was the gorilla, and that's now a known species.
Well, I mean, even in Vietnam back in, I guess, the early 2000s, they found that what they call the bicorn, it's a deer that basically has two almost like unicorn horns in its head. I mean, it was known to the native people for years, but it was never, scientifically studied or classified until, around that time. I mean, even in the Philippines, there was a tribe of people that lived in the Philippines until like the 1970s that were Stone Age people.
Yeah.
That even the Filipinos didn't know lived there. I mean, you have several stories over the years of just, the Dawn Man of Redding, California.
Go into that one. Yeah, well, that one was interesting.
Basically, he was a Native American First Nations person of a extinct Indian tribe. He was the last member of the tribe, and he lived in the woods right outside of a city in California, and basically lived almost his entire life in those woods, and just navigated around people in such a way that he didn't really have any contact or wasn't noticed by these people. And eventually one day he just walked out of the woods and was like, yeah, I've been living here my entire life.
Yeah, you fools, you didn't even see me. Yeah, but that's a good case in point. You know what I mean? There's this dude, of a thought to be extinct tribe, and he's right under their noses. And I just saw something about the Arabian cat or something like that was thought to have been extinct like a decade or so ago, and now they found one.
Oh wow!
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean they're constantly. I mean, if you look in like Australia, they talk about the Australian tiger or something like that.
The Tasmanian tiger, yeah, the thylacine, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah.
They say how it's been extinct since like the 1950s, and yet, people are seeing them. People are reporting, sightings. People are trying to get photos of it. People are finding beds and nesting areas that are similar to theirs. So, I mean, there's so much in the way of woodlands and mountains and forests that are just, most of it's never been touched by a man,
Right.
So how can we say there's not something large living in those areas that we just don't know?
Yeah. And, so many people think that, just take the United States, for instance. They think that it's so populated and civilized, and that, by now we should, well, technically, the United States still holds the largest percentage of wilderness in pretty much any continent of the world. That you know what I mean? Most of the other continents have been, what's the word I'm looking for? Discovered, if you will, or inhabited.
Explored.
Yeah. And the United States, there's still so many areas that are untouched.
There was a stat I remember years ago, and I'm going to get the number wrong, but it was somewhere in the 70% of the wilderness in America has never been touched by a human. Mm-hmm. Human, basically American, colonial type human, not necessarily First Nations people.
Yeah.
But 70% of just our country alone is vast, untouched wilderness.
Mm-hmm.
You may walk through it, but I mean, I've been hunting since I was a kid. My family, have been hunters and stuff like that. I mean, how many times you walk right by an animal and don't even notice it?
Exactly.
So, I mean, there's definitely a possibility for something large, as big as us or bigger, to be walking within a couple of yards of you in some, places in the mountains and stuff like that, where short of it making a loud snapping sound of it breaking a tree or a branch or twig, you may never even notice it. I mean, I've had, deer walk up to me that, sitting in an open clearing, I didn't hear them coming, and all of a sudden they pass under my tree stand, and there's a deer out in front of me, and it came right from behind me. So
basically without a sound too. Yeah, you don't even know until they're right on top of you. Yep.
Yeah, it's
and we as people, our senses are so dull. You know what I mean? Like our hearing. I mean, our sight is probably the most keenest sense that we have, but our sense of smell is horrible. Our hearing is horrible compared to other animals. You know what I mean? Like we're not in tune anymore.
Our senses, as advanced as we like to think we are as humans, our like sense of smell doesn't even compare to the Neanderthal sense of smell.
Yep.
Our senses are definitely not even recent, family tree of human beings. We're not really that much more advanced. I mean, our brains are similar size, except for they had the advantage of, smell. Now, I think our eyesight is better than theirs, but, eyesight is great if you can see in front of you. If you're looking into dense woods, it's a pine thicket.
Yeah.
Your sense of eyesight isn't really as advantageous as maybe the sense of smell, where you would smell the animal coming closer or going away from you, or, being able to pick up, their trail by being able to smell their dung to see if it, what kind of animal it is, or, keep up with those animals.
Yes, you're right. I'm sorry. I was reading a post. I'm not ignoring you, but
okay, that's good, because that was odd.
Yeah, it was just an odd silence right there. I was reading a post. I'm like, oh shoot, he stopped talking. I'm sorry. No, I hear you. You're absolutely right. And that's the thing is, so many people think, oh, well, you'd see it. You did. We're so damn oblivious as a species anymore. You wouldn't see jack squat. And I know we're going to touch base on this a little bit further, but back to the topic at hand is, I always say, like, look at the movie Harry and the Hendersons. I know people could laugh at me, whatever. That to me still is like, they did their homework on that movie. Like, look at the end scene when Harry goes back into the forest. There are how many other ones? There you go. There he is. How many other Bigfoot standing around him? Even the little baby one, you didn't, because you're paying attention to a subject, to an object. Mm-hmm. And you didn't even see the other one standing there. Even watching that movie back, knowing it's going to happen, even so many times, I'm like, dang, there it is. You don't find it until it moves. Mm-hmm. That is a prime example as to how we would miss something like that. I mean, obviously, if they're moving and you see movement that is going to break away from everything else in the forest, that's going to make it stand out, then yes, you will see it. But like you said, with the deer and everything else, if they stand still, I mean, a deer is a rusty red, or, like a rust color.
Yeah.
And it stands within green. Contrasting colors. You still don't see the damn thing until it moves. You know what I mean?
And you got to realize, a lot of times, one of the things I was taught early on about hunting deer is you're not looking for something vertical. When you're looking for deer, you got to look on the horizontal. Mm-hmm. Because if you're looking vertical, a deer standing chest to you and not moving, unless it's close enough that you can make out the features of it, it's a tree in the distance. It's a small little sapling or something like that. So you almost have to train your eyes and your mind to process, I'm not looking at vertical, I'm looking for a horizontal that's, moving, or maybe standing still, and those very small movements of an ear moving. Right. Or something like that.
A flicker or something.
Yeah, when you're talking about, a Sasquatch, you're talking about something tall, broad, but at a distance.
But blends into its surroundings. And I mean, you take the Pacific Northwest in particular, I mean, technically that's a rainforest. You have a lot of that creeper moss and a lot of that, moss hanging out in the trees is going to look like the fur and whatnot. You know what I mean? So it would be easy to blend in. And you know what? Back to the topic. Should we get back to the topic at hand?
Well, I'd just like to point out, like you were saying about, the Pacific Northwest. I mean, here in Virginia, there are so many vines that just are growing up trees and then growing off the trees.
Right.
When you look into the woods, sometimes all you're seeing is vine. It's just straight up vines. It's, you see the shape of a tree with a thick coating of these vines hanging off it. It's very hard. Something could be sitting right inside those vines and you'd never even, take notice to it.
Yep, exactly. And especially because we've evolved into such a narrow-sighted, almost like we have blinders on. We only know what's in front of us, especially, technical age. We don't pay attention.
I was doing that a little bit ago. I was making, most people, I mean, look at, Berkshire Mall, where, in Reading, an hour from where we're from, that lady walked right into the fountain.
Yeah.
She was looking at her cell phone, walks right into a fountain and into the water.
Mm-hmm.
People aren't as observant as they used to be. They're not, because they're not looking for their food.
Right.
You just got to find a gas station, a grocery store, or a fast food restaurant.
And you got it. Yeah.
You don't have to look for that deer walking through the woods, a bear, a snake.
Yep.
I find snakes, every time we go out hiking, I'm on snake patrol because I look for those things.
Yeah, they're everywhere.
Yeah, I'm not going to walk up on, a poisonous snake and get bit because I'm not paying attention.
Mm-hmm. And what did you learn last time we went out? Wet rattles don't make noise.
Les loves to remind me that there are snakes in the woods. And when I'm wearing flip-flops, he likes to point out, after a rainstorm, rattlesnakes' tails don't rattle when they're wet.
You're the only person that goes in the forest with flip-flops.
I'm a man.
Yeah, you're an alpha male. I forgot.
Yes, I do alpha things. Like
wear boots in the middle of the forest.
You're right. I'm not going to, I'm not going to sissify myself to put on, $200 pair of boots when I can buy a $9 pair of flip-flops and go traipsing through the woods.
You got it, brother. Well, you know what? Let's get back to the topic at hand here. So we're talking about Bigfoot, right? And we're talking about where they are around the world, and we've accomplished that they are virtually everywhere, with the exception of like maybe Hawaii, so or the islands, So okay, let's go back and talk about what does a Bigfoot look like, or how would you describe, or are they described? So, individuals claiming to have seen Bigfoot describe them as a large, hairy, muscular, bipedal ape-like creature, roughly 7 to upwards of 10 feet tall, covered in hair colors ranging from black, brown, or dark red, like a rust color. And some people in Pennsylvania and Ohio in particular also, and I have a story about this, also, we'll talk about it later, claim to have seen an all-white or albino Bigfoot. You just threw me off there when that thing changed. Some descriptions include details such as large eyes, the pronounced brow ridge, a large low-set forehead, very almost caveman-like, or I guess kind of gorilla-like, could be either or. And the top of the head has that conical crest, the sagittal crest, like the gorilla, Yeah. So the creature's been reported of having a funky stank about him. Like a sulfur, you like that? Sulfur, rotting egg, wet dog, just horrid, putrid smell.
I actually heard a description of it today that I don't think I've ever thought of.
What's that?
But the description was a sour pig pen. And that comes from the old Legends of Boggy Creek, or whatever the movie was, but when they actually described it as a sour pig pen smell. which first of all, I don't know what a pig pen should smell like, and a sour one, the idea of that just makes me nauseous. So.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, hey, just think about all the times you get stuck behind those trucks hauling them along the highway.
Yeah, that's true.
Disgusting, you know? But, oh, yeah, and of course, one of the last obvious characteristics of a Bigfoot is their big feet. Leslie had to point that out there. And big feet.
Really?
Yes.
Really, they have big feet.
Yes.
You know what they say? You know what they say about Bigfoot?
Big socks.
I'm bigger.
Right. Okay. So, all right. So, back to the descriptions. I guess we'll go back to that, and we'll segue from that. The enormous footprints for which the creature is named are claimed to be as large as 24 inches long to 8 inches wide. And again, coming up later, I have stuff that could validate that. At least I hope. Mm-hmm. Some footprint casts have also contained claw marks, which to me would most likely indicate it's an overstep of a bear where the hind leg goes down, the foreleg comes over top, and it looks like a giant footprint, but when you see those claws, it's 99.9% a bear. Sorry to upset people. And they have 5 toes, obviously, like we do. And proponents of Bigfoot's existence claim that the creature is omnivorous, eating meat and veggies, and they are primarily nocturnal, which I'm not going to give away the farm, so we'll talk about some other stuff later. Mm-hmm. So, anything to add to that, homie?
I guess, from the areas that we've researched, over the years that I've been doing this with you, I would definitely say there is an abundance of, between fruits, berries, and other meat sources that would definitely, play into a larger, if it is a primate, I hate to always say a larger primate's diet, but it would definitely be food sources, and a lot of those areas, would be plentiful for an animal, between nuts and, other animals and just mountain berries and stuff like that would definitely be, available to something living in the, the woods or the forest.
Yeah.
So
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to add to that. People are out. How could an animal that big survive and blah 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 blah? Well, first off, let me start by saying I am very much a skeptic. I don't believe anything until I see it. However, I do think that there is some data out there. There's some information out there that could support the claim of this creature existing. But for the record, I don't believe it until I see it. I just think it's possible. Because I get that question a million times.
Yeah, I think my thing with Bigfoot is I think it's plausible.
Yeah.
Nothing has, no argument has ever completely shut down the plausibility of it for me.
Right.
So until one way or another, until we have a scientifically studyable population of them,
mm-hmm.
or we completely destroy all the woods and we don't find them.
Yeah.
There's always that, the possibility of something existing.
Well, like I was saying too, though, in part to that is there are a lot of large mammals
mm-hmm.
that survive all different kind of extremes in the United States and around the world. And, everybody's, how could it sustain itself? How does everything else? Mm-hmm. It's evolved, it's adapted, it's tolerant of its environment. It knows how to survive. I don't know. I could go on for days about that. But did we miss anything on describing and characterizing these things?
No, not really. But I'd like to point out, though, that, the only reason we exist is because we fit the situation we exist in.
Right.
We've adapted to certain things. If we were a couple degrees closer to the sun, we wouldn't be who we are. Mm-hmm. If we were a couple degrees further away from the sun, we wouldn't be who we are.
Exactly.
We've adapted and our species has been able to survive because it fits the window in which it's living.
Right.
So to disqualify, something else couldn't be out there living in the same window we're living in because it fits its window is foolish, if anything.
Right.
To completely discount a possibility of something living or existing is, completely foolish without concrete evidence of it not existing.
Right.
So Les, let's get to, the real, our first use of the term Bigfoot. Because I know there's been other, things over through history that, have been thrown out there as quote unquote big feet or Bigfoot.
Yeah, or mainly wild men, hairy men of the forest, and this and that.
Yeah.
So you're asking, how did how did this creature get named Bigfoot? Besides the obvious.
Yeah, in our modern society.
Well, it was the obvious, to be perfectly frank. The name Bigfoot started in October 1958. It was at a construction site in the Bluff Creek, California area. Gerald or Jerry Crew found a set of like a trackway along in August, and then again in October, I think 1st and 2nd, 1958, on one of the sites that he was working on. I think they're like a logging crew or something like that. I don't know, could be wrong, but it's construction.
Logging a road crew, something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, and you can look it up. So he's told by his fellow workers, some of whom are Hoopa Indians. So the maker of the trackway or the footprints is a hairy forest giant. Again, a lot of the natives refer to them as wild men of the forest, hairy men of the forest. That was what they were coined in more historical documents. So Crew made plaster casts that he was instructed on how to do that by a taxidermist named Bob Titmus. He makes a couple replicas of the large prints at the site on October 3rd, I believe. And then Crew brought the casts to a local newspaper and to the show's editor, Andrew Genzoli or something like that. He published the illustrations of the story. I think it was in the Humboldt Times on October 5th in 1958. So I think these dates are correct. Then the Genzoli repeats the name that he hears from Jerry Crew's construction crew and their wives, especially what was the lady's name? Jess Bemis, I think, was the one who used the term. And she said that the creature that made the tracks is called Bigfoot. So he heard that name, he stuck with it, and he printed it in the Humboldt Times, and that really is how the name Bigfoot became known.
That's pretty interesting. I mean, very original, Bigfoot.
Yeah. Hey, man, they were good back then.
Yeah. Now, you also got to realize, like now in modern days, Humboldt County in California is also like a huge marijuana production area.
Well, kind of goes hand in hand, Man, I saw something out there, dude. Oh, man. Were you high? Hell no.
So, that's here nor there basically on the subject, though. I mean, I'm just pointing out that nowadays it is a large marijuana controlled, area. And, so I honestly don't know in the 50s if there was any of that going on. So, but, you got to figure a lot of these areas that these people were working weren't, 20 yards into the woods where somebody could have easily kicked off a shoe or walked a couple feet and start making these, put on some casts and start making a print or something like that. You're deep into these wooded areas, so I guess, realistically to me, there was probably something out there, creating these footprints that was not necessarily, human.
Yeah.
Not saying it wasn't human. I'm saying necessarily human.
Right.
So
go ahead.
I was going to just, kind of continue on with the show unless you had some, something.
No, I was just going to say, I'm kind of 50-50 on that. Like, I very well think a lot of these things are hoaxed, and some of these people are like, man, I was so deep in the woods, which really probably wasn't that deep at all. There's people in the woods all the time, especially if they if somebody catches wind, like there's so many different Bigfoot groups out there. We have the Xplorers. We look into that stuff. I have the Sasquatch ATV research team that you and I are part of. I'm also the Eastern coordinator of the Pennsylvania Bigfoot Society, well, now known as the Keystone Bigfoot Project. There's groups everywhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
All it takes is for you and I to be talking. We're part of a group. And, hey, this is my buddy. We're on our way to work, but I want to talk to you about this quick. Hey, next weekend, don't forget we're going to be going up in the Broad Mountain, and we're going to be going back to Powerline Trail. We're going to go snooping around, see if we can find any tracks. Oh, yeah, I remember that. Okay, cool. See you later. Hey, nice meeting you, buddy. Then you leave. You go to work. You go do your thing. That buddy who just heard that little tidbit, holy shit, oh, pardon my language. Holy cow, you know what? Les and Chad were just talking about, going out in the power line up in the Broad. We got to get up there before they do. And then we go up there like, nobody knew about it. It was unplanned. This couldn't have been staged. Like everybody said that. Of course it could. The only thing that would make me is if you and I were just randomly one day, dude, let's go for a hike somewhere. Okay, cool. Totally spontaneous. And say you were out somewhere that isn't a common trail, or you actually did go off the beaten path and you found, a series of prints along some kind of secluded or, small little creek bed or something like that. Then I would be more prone to saying, hey, now that could be something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But along the more popular areas, when you find tracks, my opinion, take it for what it's worth. I'm not trying to start any controversy with other people or anything like that. It's not what we're here for. But my opinion is, if it's a active area, it's probably a hoax. If you are truly out on a whim that isn't planned, that anybody could have gotten word of, then the likelihood of it being real is greater,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, even in some areas, like if you're hiking, on a set of trails or something like that, anybody could just be, I'm going to, put on this, form. I'm going to go step over there in the mud. Maybe somebody sees it someday, takes a picture of it, tries casting it, is posting it on Facebook. And you sit back, as the person who did it and go, haha, I got a whole bunch of rubes now thinking there's Bigfoot walking through, whatever state park or something like that.
Yep. Well, here's a kind of off topic, but on topic. One day I went to, I saw it posted in, I don't even remember, it was some kind of stupid little newspaper or something that I never get. I think I actually found it on the sidewalk or something, and I was picking up to throw it away, and I actually saw a snippet about a paranormal roundtable kind of talk in Orwigsburg, Pennsylvania, which is the town I grew up in, about an hour from me, where my parents and most of my family live. And I'm like, hey, you know what? I want to go to this. So I went. And I was sitting there listening to people talk, and one guy was saying about how, I guess back in, most of the people were older, which like late 50s, early 60s, which surprised me that people that old would be, into this. Not that that's old, but you know what I mean. They'd be smarter at that age. But anyway, the one guy was saying back in the 50s, he and his siblings, I don't know what he say, he rolled a ball, or I don't know, they made some kind of track that looked serpentine, right?
Yeah.
And then it was this big story, and I want to say it was near Charlottesville. And it was this big story about how, a giant snake was loose in the area. Like it caught wind. Like this story really took off. And it was them.
Oh, yeah.
They were just messing around rolling a ball, and somebody said, oh, hey, it looks like a giant snake. What else could have done this? And it spread like wildfire.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think to create, if you go back and some of the audience may remember this television show. Some of you guys will be, Googling it later. There was a show on MTV called Fear.
Yeah.
And it basically kicked off all the paranormal television that we had there for a while and that we still have some of the shows. But basically they took people to a location, fed them a whole bunch of information about this location that wasn't true, and then turned out the lights and took them there at night, gave them night vision cameras, and made them do things in an environment that they were fed all this information about, and people were having experiences, oh, I heard something, I felt something touch me, I this or the other thing. And the funny part about it was the whole entire, this was a prison and people were murdered here and this and that and all this, horrible stuff happens down here in this room. It was all faked.
Right.
But because the suggestion was put out there to these people, they, in their minds, subconsciously accepted it as reality, and then all of a sudden started having experiences that went along with the information they were fed. So it's not
a hoax. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think hoaxing is as hard as people think it is.
No, it's not. No, it's very easy. And and I hate to say it, but a lot of people are just so damn gullible, and they're so easily bought into stuff. And it's like, a lot of people, I think, get kind of pissed off at me because they know that I'm into this, so they automatically assume that he's a believer. He believes 100. No, I'm interested in it. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like I said before, I'm not a believer until I'm a seer, And they come to me, and like another group, I forget the name of them, had stuff up about a castaway, and I had some, rebuttals about it and whatnot, and they kept trying to, well, it could have been, no, it's very easily in the realm of a human being. Well, why would a person run through, this, that, or it? Well, why wouldn't they? If you have a bunch of young kids out hunting, young kids are dumbasses. You know what I mean? They do dumb stuff. And you know what I mean? Like, it was too easily written off, and I don't know. And Leslie posts another thing too about hoaxing is on National Geographic. There's a show that me and my daughter love, The Legend of Mick Dodge. Corniest show you ever want to see, but I absolutely love it. The one episode he dressed up in a beaver suit, a suit made out of beaver fur. And he looked like a Bigfoot.
That was strange.
Yeah. A beaver suit. Yeah, he was a giant beaver. No, he in a beaver skin suit, and he was pretending to be Bigfoot, scaring some people at a campsite because they were trashing the forest and whatnot. So I mean, again, a case of mistaken identity. It was a dude trying to F with these people, and they go back into town. Oh my God, dude, we saw Bigfoot. I'm not kidding you. It was him. Indisputable. But no, it wasn't.
Yeah. Well, I think that comes back to, basically, one of the things we always do when we're investigating is try to debunk every bit of it.
Yep.
Before you ever even consider the, how to put it, scientifically highly implausible explanation.
Right.
Before you say it's Bigfoot, you really need to question every piece of information and go back to the old motto of when in doubt, throw it out.
Yeah.
We do it all the time with the paranormal. If there's a sound that we can account for, we're not presenting that as evidence to people. We were in this building and we heard this, and it's got to be a ghost. It's got to be paranormal. Well, you and I saw we were in a windy old mansion during April with a pretty gusty wind, and you and I probably spent a half hour just walking from window pane to window pane, debunking a lot of the sounds.
And one of our guys swore up and down, "Oh, that's not that. It's a noise." No, it was the window pane. Trust me.
Yeah, I mean, we sat there and actually watched the window pane make the noise, and so we the rest of the night, we knew every time we heard that noise, okay, it's that window. It's not somebody running on the steps or somebody running on the floor above you. It's that window pane in the stairwell.
Right.
You know, so
well, talk about hoaxes. I don't know what your opinion is on this, but I'll ask you once we get into the meat and potatoes. But one of the biggest, what's the word I'm looking for? Not hoax. One of the biggest, what the hell is the word I'm looking for? It's not real. It's not fake. It's one of the biggest. Well, let's just talk about the Patterson-Gimlin film. Jesus, I don't know what the hell I'm saying. So, is it a hoax? Is it a real Bigfoot? That's what the world wants to know. And God, I wish I had the answer. There you go. There she is in all her splendor, letting it all hang out as Patty, famously named after the Patterson-Gimlin film. They called this Bigfoot Patty. This was shot in 1967. I believe it was October of 1967, again in the Bluff Creek, California. Two men.
It was around October 20th of 67. So we're actually the 50th anniversary of this filming is this year.
You got it, Brotato Chip. So let's get back to the film, shall we? Yeah. All right. So we have Patty, this Bigfoot. How was she filmed? You have two dudes. What's it? Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin, whom, let me just say, I've never met the dude, but he seems like a 100% legitimate, honest to God, good fellow. I do not think he is trying to pull the wool over anybody's eyes. Anything I've ever seen about him, anybody I know that has ever met him, all say the same thing about his sincerity. Yeah. So they were out in October 67, Bluff Creek, California. They're out horseback riding, and they're out filming, trying to film a Bigfoot. Right there spikes a little bit of irony in my mind. So they're riding along. They come across this, I guess it was like a dried up creek bed or something. And across the creek, crouched down, they see this Bigfoot. And I guess it acknowledges them. It gets startled. It gets up and walks away. And as you Google the film out there, people, we don't have a link, but you can find it very easily. And MK Davis, I think it was MK Davis, did a breakdown where he
stabilized,
yeah, and it's gorgeous. It's gorgeous. Yeah. Look that up, MK Davis, Patterson-Gimlin film. You'll see Patty walking across the creek bed like you've never seen her move before. She could have been a ballet dancer. I'm telling you, she was gorgeous. But anyways, they see this creature crouched down. She stands. She acknowledges them. She stands up. She walks away. This picture here, I think, was frame 367. I think. Don't quote me on that. But this is the most famous image or depiction of a Bigfoot in that gliding stride that she has, and why they would call her a she, and she's named Patty. Obviously, you can see she has like pendulous breasts in front of her. A lot of things in this film that make me think that it could be real is the fact that if you actually watch it, you could see the way the fur moves fluently with the body and the muscle striations, stuff that you wouldn't really see in a person in just a regular old monkey suit. Like if I dressed up in a suit like that and walked around, you're going to see sagging and well, maybe not because I'm pretty fat, but in a normal person, you would see sagging, bunching, creasing, zippers, the back of the neck where the mask would go. Now, granted, the film is old. The film is very grainy. The quality is subpar, but you don't see a lot of that, and you would see a lot of it because there's a shot when you see her back, and you can see from the light there's nothing that I could see that would be a zipper or anything to get that suit off. And she walks across the creek bed, and they film her as she walks up into the forest. And if you watch the extended film of that, there's actually more footage than just what's normally shown. But they have her going further out into the forest. They follow her tracks, but they don't see her again. I believe they don't see her again after that sighting. But again, like I said, things that could point to this being true is in the 60s, you don't really have that kind of special effects technology or the quality of suits and stuff like that. And why would you think so far ahead? I mean, I guess if you're really trying to pull the wool over somebody's eyes, I guess, why would you put breasts on this thing? And why, there's just so many things that make you scratch your head as to, why would they go to this extent? But I guess if you're really trying to pull the wool over people's eyes, you would go the extra mile. But there's a lot of things in this thing. I honestly hope that it's real, because I just absolutely love that footage, and that's just my personal interest in it. I'm not saying it is. I don't know. I wasn't there. Bob Gimlin swears up and down that it's real. It's a gorgeous piece of film, no matter what it is. It's a really cool. I love it, but there's a lot of things that would say that it's fake. Number one, Patterson was known to hoax tracks. He was a hoaxer. I think his wife was involved in it. He's been busted faking tracks. So that there is like, okay, your credibility has just sunk horribly. There's other people that have come out against the film saying that they were part of it. There's a guy named Bob Hieronymus, who supposedly was the guy who wore the Patty costume and walked across the creek bed. He claims up and down he was the Bigfoot. He was the one being filmed. And then there's another gentleman named Philip Morris. He's the owner of Morris Costumes. He claimed to have made the suit that was worn in that film. So, and again, like I said, he freaking falsified tracks. You know what I mean? And to sit there and say, I'm going to go out and film a Bigfoot. You know how many freaking people said that? And this dude's like, yeah, I'm going to go out and film a Bigfoot. And then all of a sudden, hey, I found a Bigfoot. Now, to play the devil's advocate, they were really out there. You know what I mean? I mean, sometimes they always say if you go looking for something, you're never going to see it. But then again, if you go way out of the way, you never know what you're going to happen upon. Like I said, I would love to think that this is real. I really would. But again, it's one of those things. I mean, it's been analyzed by so many different professionals, so many scientists and you know what I mean, experts in the different fields. Like, what was the thing you were talking about with the leg or the way it walks?
There's a documentary basically based off of the Patterson Gimlin film. It's called 21 Degrees, and it has, I haven't seen it in years, but it has to do with the angle during the stride of the leg being at 21 degrees, which for a human being to do that is next to impossible. They tested it on people who had no clue what they were testing, but had them set up in this thing where they tried to walk with and this angle of 21 degrees. You can't have footfall in a gliding motion. You almost stumble as you're walking. Mm-hmm. Now, I'd like to give my opinion on the Patterson Gimlin film, if that's okay.
You have my blessings.
To address the costume, Morris's story. The arm is entirely too long for a human arm. With extensions inside of a costume to make the arms longer, during the video you can see the fingers articulating as it moves. Animatronics would be needed to do that. The president or the head of Disney, now Disney, who has animatronics all over their park.
Yeah.
When questioned about this film in about 1968 or 69, said we can't duplicate that. We couldn't duplicate the costume if it is a costume, but we definitely could not duplicate the articulation of the muscles on the body or of the fingers. Mm-hmm. Another movie company was asked the same question. They said, nah, we couldn't even touch that. you've got to realize that if it is a costume compared to the 1960s Planet of the Apes costumes, which were considered state of the art when they were created, they don't match.
Right.
You know, the whole costume thing, the guy has never been able to produce the costume. Not to the specifications of what you see in that film. My other point of really kind of believing that this is an actual film of a large unknown creature is the fact that when the film was shown to Russian biomechanic experts in the 60s, in early 70s, two of them said there's no way this is a hoaxed film. The biomechanics of the creature moving are unlike or unable to be reproduced by human beings. Now, why would, during the height of the beginning of the Cold War, why would Russian scientists validate an American film of a creature, noting that Russia has had a history of dealing with wild men in the woods? Why would a biomechanics expert, which is locomotion of the body, the movement of the body, articulation of muscles and contractions and stuff like that, why would they ever say a film filmed in America was true evidence? We've all heard, Russia's, stories on their, Bigfoot. So, there's a lot of things, like people throw out the costume thing. The gate is next to impossible to duplicate, if not impossible to duplicate. Realizing these people were doing the same gate as Patty on dry, flat land.
Right.
Patty is walking through a washout from the 64 flood of that area. They have been able to refine the location over the years and do this. Gimlin himself completely, until about 2005, 2007, had only given 3 interviews. 3 interviews up until about 2007 about the filming of it, what it was, where it was, and what he thought.
Right.
He makes no money from that. He's never made money from the film. So for him to keep this, if it was a hoax, for him to keep that alive all these years, why?
Exactly.
He
was just an old cowboy.
Well, now you got to also realize he was a part-time rodeo cowboy, and he's also part Yakima, Native American, First Nations people. So, yeah, there's reasons he might keep this going, but he had heard stories of this as a kid. And people also always kind of point to this, and it's kind of historically inaccurate. This was not the first time Roger Patterson went into the woods looking for this in those areas. They returned to that area after this. They made castings of Patty's trackway. Other people, in fact, George W. Bush's one secretary of something or another actually took photographs. He was with U.S. Department of Conservation back then, Lafferty, I believe his last name is, about 3 days after it happened. So, to me, I don't think this is a hoax, because all the evidence towards a hoax, nobody can replicate what they're saying in that it is a hoax.
Right.
Nobody the science of costume making back then and animatronics was not what you see in that video. The
Yeah.
fact that he was out looking for Bigfoot and he, happens to film a Bigfoot, well, you go out in the woods long enough, and if it's really out there, eventually you're going to see something.
Yeah.
Now, I know, I believe it was Gimlin or Patterson said he wishes he would have shot the thing.
Yeah.
Instead of
put it all to rest.
Yeah, instead of filming it, instead of bringing back a canister of film, they have said over the years they wish they would have shot it to put it to rest, to give people look, film's one thing. We can all debunk film, every chance we get, we can try to debunk it, and people can say, "Oh, it's a costume." Oh, no, it can't be a costume because of the articulation. We don't know. We weren't there.
Exactly.
But there's a lot of experts coming out for it being real. There's a lot of experts that come out and say it's not real. I think it's a great piece of evidence if it is real, because it may be the only real film of a Sasquatch ever captured.
Yeah.
Or it is one of the greatest hoax ever perpetrated.
And therein lies the mystery, my friend. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So let's kind of get back. Let's get a little bit off the Patterson Gimlin film. What could Bigfoot have descended from? Give us some ideas of where this creature comes in our family tree, or possibly not even our family tree, where it might be from.
Well, this is kind of a confusing topic, if you will. Some people think it's like a relic hominid. Some people say it's descended from, a giant ape. Some people think it's from a spaceship. Hey, I'm not going to discredit anybody's theories. I just don't have to believe them. There's so much stuff out there. So much stuff out there. I mean, people got a lot of freaking time on their hands. One of the primary theories, and one that I more or less buy into, I don't think it's a interdimensional being. I don't think it's dropped down by a spaceship, although there's a lot of people that claim there's evidence to prove that, and that's a whole other show. Anyway, I personally believe or think that evidence would point more towards this being more of a relic hominid or a descendant of something and evolved into the Bigfoot. So Gigantopithecus blackie or black eye, however you want to pronounce it. The Gigantopithecus. Some people believe that, the Bigfoot is a descendant of this creature. Thousands of years ago, this creature, was... They found fossils primarily of teeth of this and lower jaw bones. I think the lower mandible or something like that of the Gigantopithecus. It was found in Asia. So there's a good chance that this creature, now granted it was more not bipedal but quadruped, probably stayed more within family groups and certain areas, probably didn't travel far, just stayed within a certain migratory route to keep its food. Whereas ancient humans came across the land bridge across the Bering Sea, came into North America, traveled down, and populated all over the United States, which they became Native Americans. Everybody knows the story. So could a family group or descendants of this creature, or maybe an offshoot, they were like the Gigantopithecus, but maybe a little bit more mobile, could they have come across the land bridge when early man did? It's possible. Lots of creatures came across the land bridge. So the Gigantopithecus, the fossils were found in Asia. And given that many species of animals migrated across the land bridge, they believed it was, a reasonable assumption that it came across. So the fossils have not been found in the Americas for the Gigantopithecus. The only recovered fossils are the mandible and teeth, like I said before, leaving uncertainty about the Gigantopithecus locomotion. There was a scientist, Dr. Grover Krantz, I think it was Doctor in his name. Grover Krantz, brilliant person, wrote tons of books, or not tons, but wrote a few books about Bigfoot. I highly suggest you look them up. I have a couple copies myself. He argued, based on the extrapolation of the shape of the mandible, the Gigantopithecus blackie could have been bipedal. However, the relevant part of the mandible is not present in any fossils. So an alternative view is that the Gigantopithecus was a quadruped, like I said. The Gigantopithecus's enormous mass would have made it difficult for it to adapt to being bipedal. So, some people they criticize the Gigantopithecus hypothesis. Now, this is what a Gigantopithecus would be compared to a human. Now, you can't really see the human's head behind my video there, but you get the idea. They were big, and if they evolved from being quadruped to a biped, they'd be really, really huge. So the trouble with this account is that the Gigantopithecus was not a hominid, and maybe not even a crown group hominoid. Yet the physical evidence implies that the Bigfoot is an upright biped with buttocks, and a long, stout, permanently adducted hallux. These are the there are hominid. Oh God, what the heck is the word I'm trying to think? Well, there's other mammals that are found, other bipedal, found in other mammals and other bipeds that it's seemingly unlikely that the Gigantopithecus would have evolved those unique traits in parallel. But anyways, there are. Let me check my notes here. There are some other extinct hominids that the Bigfoot could have descended from. You have a species of human, the Paranthropus, such as the Paranthropus robustus, which is pictured here. Looks a lot like a Bigfoot. So you have this ancient family member with its gorilla-like crested skull, its bipedal gait, was suggested by primatologist John Napier and anthropologist Gordon Strassenberg as a possible candidate for Bigfoot's identity, despite the fact that the fossils of Paranthropus are found only in Africa. So, but supposedly all life originated in Africa and it's moved its way out. So let's just say this guy, made its way up from Africa into the, Asian continent and across the bridge. And I mean, look at this picture of what it looked like. It very well could be a Bigfoot. And over time, I mean, this is hundreds of thousands of years, plenty of time for, evolution to take hold and change its physical characteristics. It grew here, long hair to adapt to a colder climate. It's not in Africa. It's not warm anymore. So it became like a lot of the creatures in North America back in the Ice Age, woolly. You have the woolly rhinoceros, you have the woolly mammoth, you have all different kind of creatures covered in hair to adapt to their climate. So let's just say this robustus boy here came across and, grew some hair and, good candidate for being Bigfoot. Again, like I said, I subscribe more to the relic hominid, the ancestral creature, the parallel branch to ours. But, some suggest also that Neanderthal, Homo erectus, or Homo heidelbergensis, or however the hell you pronounce it, to be the creature, but no remains of any of those species have been found in the Americas. Again, that's the big thing, is all these remains are everywhere but here. But, how hard did you look around here? I don't know. Supposedly up in New York, there's burial mounds of giants. You know what I mean? Like Native Americans, a lot of different tribes had burial mounds where they would bury their or their family members and their belongings and whatnot. And there's some of the I don't know, the location escapes me right now, but I forget the name of the tribe, but it was in New York State. Supposedly there were these giant mounds, and within them, sorry, my throat's getting dry. Bear with me for a minute here. But this tribe of Native Americans had these mounds then, and when they were exhumed, the skeletons were gigantic. So could it be not just giant people, but mounds of Bigfoot? And, Native people hold a lot of things sacred, a lot of creatures, a lot of, plants and whatnot, and the earth, the way it should be. Who's to say that they didn't, if they found a Sasquatch or whatever deceased, that maybe they took part in burial rites for it. And I wouldn't write off the Bigfoot creature itself or the Bigfoot species themselves. I would say that it's very likely that they would hold their own kind of burial rites, because even there's evidence that proves that Neanderthal, which is supposed to be very, very primitive, very dumb, lumbering idiot of the human, evolutionary tree, they buried their dead. You know what I mean? So I think it's very plausible. And again, they're talking about Robustus as, way, 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 way back when, in the early days of. Go ahead.
Robustus is about 2 million to 2.1 million years ago.
Right. And what is it? It has to be a few 100,000 years in order for any kind of evolutionary traits to change, which I disagree with, because you see evolution taking place in a lot of species now, and it's pretty quick. You know what I mean?
There's a difference between, and I don't know the difference between microevolution and macroevolution, which are two different versions of evolution.
Right.
Now, the only thing with Robustus that I kind of don't like the theory of Robustus is the average skeleton that has been found of the males of what they believe to be male is only about 4 foot tall. The female only being about 3 foot, a little over 3 foot tall.
Right.
Now, don't get me wrong. Over time, we have grown as a species.
Well, geez, you go to the museums and look at a lot of the medieval suits of armor. It's like they were for munchkins. You know what I mean? They're so tiny.
Well, not to, bring up religion in this, but, using a story that's in the Bible, David and Goliath. David, average height of a man back then was about 5'3" to about 5'6". Probably about 5'4" was, top end.
Yeah.
When you take the cubit description of Goliath and actually apply math to it, Goliath is only 6.5 to 6'6" to 6'9", depending on whose version of the math you use.
Yeah.
So you got to figure 2,000 years, about 4,000 maybe. My biblical numbers are escaping me right now. We've only grown 8-9 inches in height evolutionally. And Heidelbergus, they're only about 5'9" male, 5'2" now there is a scientist, Witwatersrand University, Lee R. Berger, who puts Heidelberg Gensis at 7 foot tall, and as late as 500,000 to 300,000 years ago. Now, 7 foot tall would fit more into the Bigfoot description.
Right. And you look at just in a few thousand years, the average height of people. Look at the kids now that are coming out of schools. I'm 6'3", you're 6'3". these kids are freaking. They're making us look short.
Mm-hmm. I'm only.
You know what I mean? Oh well, whatever. But
Yeah.
you know what I mean. Just saying.
Oh yeah.
Hello, Ellis.
I mean,
Ellis says hello. Thanks for joining. We appreciate it. But yeah, you look at just in that short time frame how tall people have gotten. You know what I mean? And who's to say? You know. Now you said how many 100,000s of years? That's long enough. 500 some thousand years ago. So you figure from then till now, I'm sure a lot of different characteristics have changed on that branch of the family tree. So it very well could have gotten larger. It very well could have gotten stronger. It very well could have gotten hairier in order to, adapt to the surroundings. Because you figure the Pacific Northwest and a lot of the United States is rugged. You know what I mean? You got to be able to be big. You got to be strong. You got to be able to traverse through that. So I don't know. I'm
kind of on the Neanderthal Homo erectus, end of the thing where the more you look at stuff, the more we learn about these two branches of the tree. The more plausible to me they're starting to become as a, Bigfoot.
Yeah.
It's just me personally.
I hear you because I mean it very well because the thing that kind of makes me scratch my head and I don't dive that far back in history that often, but Homo erectus alone just kind of sprung up out of nowhere. You know what I mean? Because you go from like a Neanderthal, very apey, to modern man, and it's kind of like, well, where do we come from? And there are identified cases where there was interbreeding between Neanderthal and Homo erectus, and so could Bigfoot be a subspecies or a hybrid species from that marriage? You know what I mean? That conception.
Well, there's a percentage of the current population of Earth that has Neanderthal DNA.
Oh, we all have like 2% or something like that within us of Neanderthal.
There's a larger a group with a larger percentage of actual Neanderthal DNA, which shows that there was breeding. Now there were other groups in that time frame, in different parts of the world. So some of the stories though over the years just make me think of a human-like creature of more human than ape. There's certain things with sounds and stuff like that where they've studied the sounds of gorillas and larger apes and stuff like that, and they can't make certain sounds that people are reporting or claiming that these are Bigfoot sounds.
Right.
They can't make certain sounds, and therefore it would have to be something more human than ape.
Right.
So, I'm not, again, this is all speculation on my part, but, to me, that's, I've gotten less on the ape end of it, less on that end and more on the human or somewhere, closer to us in our tree.
Yeah. Yep.
And that's, again, that's just what I'm, starting to feel more or less because, there's just more and more evidence, more and more we're learning about Neanderthal and, Homo erectus and, there's more to that. And, a lot of people always point out, there has to be a missing link. Not necessarily.
Yeah.
There's definitely, a case for a missing link, but not necessarily that there really is a missing link.
There's so many variables that are subjective and, again,
Well, we're dealing with
I would love for this thing to be real. I really would, but like I said, until it's right in front of my face, or there's a body that they're, you know what I mean, that they have, it's just a great story, you know.
Oh yeah,
And I'll keep running around the woods looking for it, though. I mean, I won't give up.
if anything, it gets people interested in cultures.
Mm-hmm.
It gets people interested in history.
Yep.
And it gets people to stop doing this and go out in the woods and walk around.
Yeah.
If anything, even if if all the evidence is a hoax, it's making people actually get out of their house, walk around, learn what is in the woods by them.
Yeah.
Learn about the woods, about, food, and about the cultures that inhabit it. One of, my things about, between paranormal or cryptozoology, I just love history.
Yeah.
I love the myths, the legends, the history of all of it is more exciting to me. Don't get me wrong. If I was out in the woods and could run into a Bigfoot and get evidence that we could prove it, I'd be happier than could be.
Yeah.
But I'll enjoy every time I go out in the woods, just walking around, looking for signs of, I've learned more about animals looking for Bigfoot than I ever did just going out and hunting.
Yeah.
Learning about, that's what a skunk will do to a tree. That's what, a fisher will do, a badger. I've learned more about animals, about nature by doing this than, any of my other life experience going into it.
Exactly. Unless you're an armchair researcher, then you just learn it all on Google.
Well, Google's always good too. It rains. Yeah. It does rain and snow.
That's true.
But then again, you and I have also traipsed through 1.5 feet of snow to put out trail cams.
Barely.
Yeah, barely made it through 1.5 feet of snow.
We had to break out the snowshoes.
Yeah, the thing I love is Hollywood is buying into Bigfoot. Madison Avenue marketing is buying into Bigfoot.
Yeah.
You have Jack's Links, using Sasquatch sticks, and
mm-hmm.
When we first, when we were younger, you never heard Sasquatch. I mean, Yeti. You never heard the uses of these names unless it was, oh, there's that crazy guy that thought he saw Bigfoot, or
I was gonna say it was always a joke.
The Bumble and all that stuff from the movies, and you never heard it. Now it's kind of socially acceptable as a thing, even if it's not, it's never proven. It has become a socially acceptable topic.
Yeah.
You think about some of the movies over the years, Boggy Creek and that movie that you were telling me about, Letters from the Big Guy or whatever.
Yeah, Letters from the Big Man. That's a more recent movie, but I love that one. It's I don't know. It's kind of a cool story about Bigfoot and this woman in the movie, her encounter and whatnot. And again, it's kind of smart because it uses a lot of the theories that people have, like infrasound and stuff like that, like different things that a Bigfoot supposedly can do, which that's another thing that we could get into in a different show. I mean, this topic alone, there's so much you can cover and so much you could talk about. Oh, and like you said, like with Hollywood and everything, like there's so many outlets that you could go through. But one movie I just want to point on, and I know I talked about it before, is I still think the best Bigfoot movie ever made was Harry and the Hendersons. Yes, it was a family show. Yes, it was, meant to tug at your heartstrings and that could never happen and blah, blah, blah. But, I look at, like, again, they thought about, they took the stories, they took the folklore, they took all that stuff, they took it all into consideration. They made, in my opinion, the best the best depiction of what a Bigfoot would be. Like you see a lot of the Bigfoot movies, they look freaking horrible. You know what I mean? They're really bad. But Harry and the Hendersons, it's just so perfect. Like if there were one, I would say that would be what it looks like, and I would really hope that would be it, because that movie just is just so great. Mm-hmm. Which I still have the Talking Harry dolls that came out when the movie came out. I have 2 of them in my studio right now, and they still talk.
One of the things I like, with Harry and the Hendersons and a few other, Sasquatch Bigfoot movies, is they portray this creature as having intelligence.
Right.
It's not some
dumb animal running around in the woods creating havoc.
Yeah, they actually give it, as much as I'd love to trash here for Letters from the Big Guy or whatever it's called, Bigfoot in that movie is a thinking, feeling creature.
Right.
It's not some, you start to look at some of these movies where they use Bigfoot as the scary monster in the woods that's killing people.
Right. Some of the movies take into consideration that it has a soul. You know what I mean? It has. It's a real deal.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not some mindless, killing machine. Which,
who knows?
There's not a lot of evidence towards that.
Nah.
Thought process.
Well, look at that one story. God, the guy's name escapes me, and why can I not remember it? We were just talking about it the other day. He was out hunting.
Albert, is it Osterman?
Osterman, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
He was out hunting. He made a little camp. He was sleeping in his sleeping bag next to the campfire under the stars, and next thing he knows, he was scooped up in his sleeping bag, thrown over the shoulder of something like it was carrying a sack of goods. And I think he still had he didn't have his gun in the bag, I don't think. And he had just a few belongings that were in his pocket and what he put in his bag or in his sleeping bag. The creature carried it back to its den. And when he came out, he was surrounded by a male, a female, and other subadults. He was basically in the home of a Sasquatch family. And he was there for like 3 days or something like that.
It was like 4 days, somewhere around there.
Yeah, and I think he thought they were planning on eating them or something like that. And before it could get to that point, I think his way of getting away is he gave the adult male some snuff, and he ate it, swallowed it. It was burning his throat. He ran away. The other ones followed him. He took off, got away. There's your story. But that I think is an awesome story, and I totally forgot where I was going with this.
Well, we were talking about how Bigfoot as a
monster. Yeah. No, so again, there was a situation where this man encountered several, and he made it out alive. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Well, we are going. What were we at? An hour and a half now on our show. We're making it a long one. We still didn't get to our personal experiences, so I think we should start talking about that now. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm all for it.
Yeah, we'll start talking about some things that we had experienced, and then we'll wrap up the show and get ready for next show next week. So we talked a lot about Bigfoot and Sasquatch. We talked a little bit about where you can find them throughout the world. We talked about physical characteristics. Oh, and the difference. So supposedly some of the differences between male and female is the females are 6 to 7 feet tall. The males are 8 to 10 feet tall. The males tend to be darker. Females are more on the lighter and the reddish color sides. Again, just stuff that I heard. How true it is, I don't know. Nobody's ever seen one.
Well, no, people have seen
them. No, we've never found one.
Yeah.
None has ever been caught. Anyway, We covered a lot about Bigfoot, and now we're going to talk about some personal experiences. Now, again, I'm based in Pennsylvania. Chad, you're from Pennsylvania. You're now in Virginia. A few years ago, I was living in a rental property in the country. It was on 150 privately owned acres. It was a farmhouse, fairly secluded. It was butted up against a mountain. And it was gorgeous. You could see the rocky outcrops because in the part of Pennsylvania where we're from, the mountaintops are exposed with huge deposits of glacial stone. Because back in the Ice Age, when the glaciers would come through, they pushed down along with them and deposited large boulders and sediment throughout the mountains, and they're still obviously still here, and you can see them. They stick out a lot of the tops of the mountains in Pennsylvania and the Appalachian mountain range. But it was just the most beautiful setting. And I remember when we first moved in, it was like 10 years ago. I never saw the place before. I'm not even from this area. We moved in, and it was just the most picturesque, perfect thing. And as time went on, odd things started to happen. We had a little pad, a concrete pad behind the house, and we'd go out there. We had a chimney. We'd have fires in it. And we were there, and at the time, I had a little English bulldog, Chopper. He was the best little thing. But we'd go out there. Now, he was dumb as a box of freaking rocks, though, that guy. He never, well, you remember him. He never reacted to anything. You could walk in and step over him, and you'd be in there for an hour before he wakes up and realizes, hey, somebody's here. You know, you couldn't get anything out of that dog. Well, we were outside the one time, and he's seen deer. I mean, we would literally have deer in our front yard. I'd let him out to go pee. He'd walk out and stare at them, just walk past them, take a whiz, did his business. He didn't care. You know, he had goats and horses. We had everything. He didn't care about nothing. He saw every kind of animal under the sun. We had bear in the front yard. He's seen them all. Well, we were out, me, Leslie, and Chopper. We were out in the pad and having a little fire. And we heard something. Now, where the house was located, literally right behind the house, there's maybe 10 foot, and it dropped down a fairly steep bank down into a little gorge where there was a creek. Then it went up a smaller hill in the back, and then there were ponds back there. There was a freshwater pond, a smaller fishing pond, and then off the other side was a larger swimming pond. And then beyond that were walking trails and just acres and acres and acres and acres and acres of forest. Went straight up in the mountain. Beautiful. So we were out in the pad. It was night. It was dark. Just hanging out, and we heard something. Now, the deer would come up through that little valley, that little gully, and come up and then graze in the fields, because on the front end of the house it was farmed. So there was corn, and every year it was something new. And the deer would come up and feast. And we had a chestnut tree in the yard. Like, it was just gorgeous. And the one night, like I said, we were on the pad. We were out there hanging out, and we heard something coming up the creek. And we've heard deer and everything come up there before. And, yeah, they made noises, but deer are usually pretty quiet. Well, we're sitting there, and I hear something traipsing through this creek. And I'm telling you, it sounded like a freaking elephant walking through this water. It was loud. My initial reaction, or my initial thought, was a bear. And I hear it, and then all of a sudden, noticed we were up there, heard us talking, and all of a sudden you could hear it coming up the hill. You could hear it coming up through the brush. And I'm fairly loud, and I'm not exactly a small guy. So I get up, and I start yelling down the hill. Now, if it were a bear or a deer, 90% of the time, it would turn and run the other way. Whatever this thing was, it came right towards us. The dog acknowledged it. The dog started getting uneasy. So I said to Leslie, I said, get the dog and get in the house. And she's like, well, you got to come in too. I said, I got to put the fire out. I couldn't leave the fire unattended. So I screamed back down there again. The dog barked a couple of times. It kept coming up the hill. So I said, all right, screw it. I grabbed the dog. I grabbed some of the stuff that we had there. We ran into the house. Went back to the back bathroom window where it overlooked everything. We had a big spotlight out there too. Turned the light on. I didn't see nothing. So I went back out with the dog because, again, I wanted to put the fire out and I wanted to get the rest of it because we had food and stuff out there that we were cooking on the fire, like marshmallows and stuff. So I wanted to go out and get everything. I went back out, and again, I could hear something, whatever it was moving in the brush, and I yelled at it, and it charged again. I thought to myself, forget this. So I went back in the house. That happened a couple times. Then as time went on, my oldest daughter was born, and as she was growing, we'd go outside and play. And like any kid, and then again, like I said before, supposedly, and this is about the time when I started talking to Melissa, and that's why she suggested the baby crying. Supposedly, Bigfoot are attracted to the sound of children. The one time we were out in the driveway, and the again, like we're not near a road, we're not near nothing. Like the driveway was a quarter mile long. Down 100 yards down the hill from the house was the barn, and then the ponds and everything that I had explained. Then the horse field was on the front end of the house. We didn't have any horses at the time. So I'm outside playing with the kid, and she's laughing. We're having a good time. And then Leslie yells out, "All right, come on, it's time to come in. We got to eat." And okay. So I was like, all right, we got to eat. So I said to Lily, I said, okay, let's go. We got to go in. So she starts crying. And like, as little kids do, she was not happy about that. She put up a fuss and she started crying. Well, I had to yell at her to discipline her because she wasn't listening. And she got upset. She started to cry. When that happened, now, again, keep in mind, was probably, I want to say, late spring. It was warm. There weren't any leaves on the trees or anything at the time. We were outside just playing on the drive, and there was no wind, but maybe a gentle zephyr at best. Something pushed a tree down behind the barn. A tree dropped. Leslie came out of the house, asking what was that. I said, a tree just dropped. So something, it seemed almost like something, maybe it was angered, and it pushed this tree down. Could the tree have fallen on natural? It just was old and it was ready to fall? Of course. I didn't see what it was, but it was just ironic how she was upset, then a tree falls. Again, I was out with the kid, we're playing, we're walking around, there's a pear tree right behind the house. We're back there kicking pears around that had fallen. And we hear something down in the bush, back in the woods behind the house. The closest houses, they're not that far away, but they're far enough. So we hear this knock, knock, knock. And it didn't sound like it was back far enough to be one of the neighboring houses. Knock, knock, knock. And I was never a subscriber to the whole wood knocking theory, but I knew about it. I heard this noise. And it didn't sound like like a person because, like I said, it was too close to be, one of the houses. So I heard it again, knock, knock, knock. So I pick up a stick and I knock on the pear tree. Knock, knock, knock. I hear the noise again. Knock, knock, knock. Went back and forth a couple times, so I changed the pattern. Knock, knock. It went knock, knock. Changed it up again, went knock, 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 knock. Whatever I did, it did. And this went on a few more times until finally she had to go. I think she had to go potty or something. But we ended up walking away, and that was that for that. But that wasn't the first, and it wasn't the only time we had heard, hey, Sharon C., thanks for joining the show. Good to see you. Hope you're enjoying me rambling. We heard the wood knocking a few times, or what I thought was wood knocking. We heard that a few times throughout the next several months. We did notice that activity seemed to be more prevalent during the time of a full moon. I don't know if anybody else noticed that, but we noticed it. The one time it was getting closer towards winter, and I set camera traps up all over the place just because. We have all kinds of animals, and I always like to know what's hanging around. We have bear, we have everything. So the one time, I can't. I'm getting confused on my dates, but I don't know. I want to say it was November. The fishing pond had these really large carp, and I'm talking like 48 to 52 inch long, massive carp. Well, one day I'm standing in my kitchen, I look down, and I see this white thing on the edge of the pond, and I said to Leslie, I said, "What the hell is that down there?" I said, "I think it's a snowbank." I grabbed my binoculars and I looked down, and I said, "Jesus," I said, "I think that's a fish." So I went down, I took my dog. Not that he would have done anything, but I figured he could use the exercise. So I took him down there with me, and we found one of the carp was out of the pond. There you go. There's the picture. That was one of the carp. It was 37 inches. Now the tail fins were chewed off, but you could see in that picture something took a single bite out of the lower end of the fish where the egg sac or the roe would be. And if you could see it, you're not, I'm pointing and like as if you guys are going to see what I'm pointing at. In the upper left-hand corner, you can see the pond was frozen. There was not one hole that I saw that would have pulled that fish out. So it had to have happened before the pond froze, because it was really cold that night, the night before. So, after further examining, I don't know if we have any of the other pictures, but if you look on Facebook, Sasquatch ATV Research Team is our other team specifically for Bigfoot. There you go. Now, even though it's still, if you go onto the Sasquatch ATV site, you'll be able to see these pictures and a whole lot more. But this is a close-up of the bite. Now, if it were a bear or a coyote, because we had a lot of coyotes at the farm, what they do is they'll put their forepaws on whatever they are eating. They bite and they tear. They bite and they tear. This, same with a bear. Raccoons would gnaw. They'll take chunks and they'll chew away. This, and it's kind of covered by Chad's video there, almost looked like humanoid bite pattern, like the front teeth like we have. You can see the two front teeth bit in, and there you go. You can see right up in the top center of the bite where the teeth sunk in. Now, keep in mind, this bite was 4.5 inches wide. My bulldog was sniffing around at it, and it was wider than his jaws. Whatever this was big. You could see the teeth indentations. And large mammals aren't, especially during the cold months, they're not going to expend the energy trying to digest and process all the proteins. They're going to go to the high-calorie areas that are going to store the fat to make it through the winter, which is why they go after the roe and everything, the high-caloric areas. So they want to go after the quick, easy meal where they're going to get the most energy and the most reserves out of. So that's it. Took the bite out of it. So I said to Leslie, I said, well, I'm going to leave it down here. And actually, the guy who owned the property, our landlord, he actually sent one of the fish out to be examined, because this isn't the only one. We actually had 4 that were pulled out. Same thing happened to them. 4 large carp throughout the cold months. This is what happened to them. Single bites taken out of the back end. Very, very bizarre. The report came back, it died of natural causes. Now, when he sent it out, it was intact exactly like this. Natural causes.
Yeah, naturally a big hole in it.
Yeah, or maybe the fish itself died and something pulled it while it was floating out, but 4 of them? You know what I mean? Like, those carp have been down there and are still down there. For 4 of them within the same year to be pulled out. That indicates to me, not to cut you off, bud, but that indicates to me something knew it was a food source. Something knew it could get a quick and easy meal, because they were slow. I mean, they just kind of glided. And in the cold, they would skim, because the landlord's uncle would go down and, I said it was November. Leslie's posting. The landlord's uncle would go down there Yes. We need to get Leslie a video camera and a headset. She needs to be part of the show because she's always throwing it. Yeah, it was all the same pond as my darling little lady there is pointing out. There were 3 different ponds, as I had said before: a freshwater pond, a fishing pond, and a big swimming pond. 3 of the 4 were found in the fishing pond. 1 was a large koi found in the swimming pond, and I'll get to all that. Although she's typical woman, impatient, wants to get to the end right away. So this was the first of the 4. So we found this again. It was sent out. It was said it died of natural causes. The landlord's uncle would feed the fish cat food. So whenever a person would go down there, they would surface almost like a dog. They would literally beep, 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 sucking. Oh, they were the ugliest things. But they would come up literally sticking their heads out of the water trying to be fed. So that again makes me think a Bigfoot to a fish would look an awful lot like a person coming down to that pond to feed them. I mean, they were that to the point where you could literally kneel down next to the pond. You were there. Mm-hmm. You could kneel down next to the pond and throw it down. You would go to the point where you could almost reach out and pet them. So who's to say a Bigfoot didn't catch on to that? They were sitting around watching, this, because that old man would sit down there for hours feeding these fish. So you say a Bigfoot was sitting in the bush saying, okay, I see how that guy does it. He's hand feeding these things. So maybe a Bigfoot goes down there with a handful of, I don't know, berries, nuts, whatever, or even just rocks as a decoy. Starts throwing shit in there, right? So these fish catch on to it. This guy's hungry. It comes up. The Bigfoot, I mean, it's not going to be like a person like, oh, God, I don't want to get wet. Bigfoot's not going to give a crap. You know what I mean? So he gets in there. He grabs one of them. There, easy meal. He knows by watching that you could just simply throw stuff in there to attract it. The fish see its figure. They're thinking it's a person trying to feed it. It comes over. There you go. Quick and easy meal. Again, this was the first of 4. So Leslie and I, later on in the winter, we started putting game cams up everywhere. And we went down there the one time. There was snow on the ground. We didn't have the kids, thank God. We had some time together, so we're like, let's go down, check the camera traps. We'll just putz around, and then maybe we'll go somewhere. So we go down to the pond, and we're walking out. And again, like I said, there's snow all over the place. The fish carcass was then moved out onto the pond. You could see crows were there, raccoons. Everything was chewing on it. And as we were at the thing, we were kind of laughing and joking around with each other. So I started hollering out some whoops and everything just to see if anything would whoop back. And again, you're standing at the pond, off to the side, maybe 100 yards from where we were, 75 yards is the barn. And then up another 100 yards up behind that was the house. So we're down in the valley. The barn's not too far from us. We're laughing, joking around with each other, whooping and hollering and all that stuff. Wouldn't you know it? Now, again, keep in mind, like I said, when I was out with my daughter before, it sounded like something pushed a tree down behind the barn. We're sitting there, and all of a sudden, we hear this huge bang against the side of the barn. We're like, what the frick was that? So we go back over, and we found I don't want to say like a baseball to softball size rock. You could see where it hit the snow and it rolled. Something heard us making noise. We were in its area. Was it letting out a warning? I don't know. Something threw a rock. There was nobody there. It was in the winter. There were no leaves. I was able to see straight back to the big pond. If there were somebody there, we'd have seen them. We went all around the barn. There were no tracks anywhere. And we didn't go deep enough into the woods to see, because, again, we were on a time constraint, because we didn't have the kids. But we, every time we have to do something, it has to be fast because, we have to get the kids. But we didn't find it. And actually, I digress. Before this first fish was found, it was November 24th, actually. It was on my birthday. I took my ATV out for a ride because it was my birthday and I was allowed to. And So I went out for a little zip around. I always say I'm going to go out scouting. So I go out and I'm zipping around on the trails behind the house and on the property and whatnot. And again, it's 150 acres. There's a lot of places to go. And most of it is wooded. So I'm back in the one area, and I was going to go back my normal trail, but a tree had fallen over. I think this was around the time of Hurricane Sandy or whatever. A lot of trees had dropped during that hurricane. And excuse me. It was November 24th of 2012, I believe. So my normal track was covered. I couldn't get around it. So there was a side track. I never took it before. I'm like, all right, well, I'll just see where it goes. So I go up, and again, it's cold. It was flurrying. I didn't want to get the quad all full of mud because I didn't want to have to clean it off in the cold and everything. And plus, I just don't like putting my quad away dirty. Go ahead and make fun of me. I don't care. I'm a neat freak. I clean all my shit. So I go down the trail, and there's this big mud puddle. I'm like, I'm not going to go through that. I'm just going to turn around. I'm like, well, before I do, I'm just going to take a look around and see what was around the watering hole. So I go over, and literally as I approach it, there's a track in the mud. The water's pooling back into it. It's cloudy, chocolatey water. It just happened. It was, I want to say, 15 and a half inches long by 7.5 inches wide. You could distinctly see 3 out of the 5 toes, the big toe, the index toe, the middle toe. The other 2 it was over a root, so they were indistinguishable. You could, a perfect heel, the mid-tarsal break, everything was there. It was a right foot. And you can see where it landed, and then the left foot jumped over, and then it was on solid ground. But it was that one pristine track. I was freaking out. I couldn't believe it. I'm texting Leslie. I'm calling her. Oh my God, you won't believe what I found. But as I started walking around trying to find some more tracks, I was checking the branches and the bushes and looking for hair, looking for anything. I started getting. We're talking about senses before and how they're dulled. When you get put in a situation that's odd, your sixth sense kind of kicks in, where you start feeling the hair in the back of your neck sticking up. You start getting a little bit freaked out. You're almost feeling like something's in there watching you. And that's exactly how I felt. I started to get freaked out. I started hearing sticks cracking like all over the place and just really weird. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go. You ever get that feeling where you just got to go? Mm-hmm. That's how I felt. And, some people are like, dude, why didn't you stay? You should have. I listened to my gut, and my gut was saying, you got to go. So I left. I wanted to go back and cast it, but we had to go get the kids, and you know how it is. So the next day, I went back down. Leslie and I made videos of us casting it. The substrate underneath the track and the bottom of the track under the water was really soft. So the track that I did get, the cast that I did get, it wasn't as defined as I was hoping it would be. Like if I did it when it was fresh, when the mud was compacted, the sediment set in and it got soft. But I got a perfect outline of it. You've seen the cast, and I don't have. Do you have a picture of that? I think you have a picture of me holding it.
I don't have that up on here. That was actually on something else that I had the picture of. On the promo video for tonight, you actually see Les holding that cast.
That's right. And you can go on to the Sasquatch ATV Research Team Facebook page, and you'll find it in our albums in the photo gallery. There's a picture of the cast. So that was the start of it. And then, like I said, then it was this fish that was found. Then it was that we were down to the camera trap, and then we heard the rock get smashed against. There was the wood knocks, the thing that came up. There were so many things within. Oh, hey, there's me, really big. There were so many things that happened in such a short amount of time, and there's more. I mean, there's so much more that happened. I mean, this is just the tip of the iceberg. I then started talking to my landlord, and he told me that when he was younger. This property had been in his family for a few generations. When he was younger, he was getting ready to go off to college. There was a little shack back there at the time that they used to camp out in down by the ponds, the fishing pond and the freshwater pond, and there was an outhouse. And they were down there before they went off to school. They were down there having a few beers. They had food and everything. I think he said they had some cheesesteaks and stuff down there. And one of the guys had gone out. It was storming, raining, and whatnot. And he said he went out to take a leak. And I guess when he was out there doing his business, lightning lit up the sky, and he just felt uncomfortable. He felt like he was being watched. And when he said when the lightning lit up the sky, he saw the silhouette of something very large standing there watching him. He ran back in. He got everybody. When they went out to investigate and everything, they found a bunch of broken, like, snapped branches and stuff, but they didn't find whatever it was, and they didn't find any footprints. So he was intrigued by, because I told him about all this stuff, and I knew he probably thought I was crazy, and I was reluctant to do it because, he was my landlord. I didn't want him thinking, Jesus, I'm leasing this place out to a bunch of nutties. Well, I figured, you know what? If you want to find information, you got to go to the different sources. So I talked to him. He was intrigued. I was intrigued by what he had to say. He wanted to know more. Then I found out that the neighbor across the street, who is, I want to say maybe 5th or 6th generation of family that lived in the valley. He was right across the street. He had stories of activity. And then the more I started to dig, the more I started to find out from the people that have been there for generations that there's some validity to the things that I've been experiencing. And again, then we found another fish, same spot, same area, single bite mark taken out of it, just left. Then there was another one. Then there was the koi in the bigger pond that I found. I think that was in March, and it was more towards spring. It was starting to decompose, just floating around in the pond. But you were clearly able to see. And again, I have that picture on the Sasquatch site. You could see this single bite mark. I started finding bones just stacked up in certain areas, like deer bones, just piled up in certain areas. Like, it didn't look like it died and it laid and it decomposed and there it was. It was just, they were in piles. Then I found feces that were logs of blueberries. It was just like a 9-inch dump of blueberries. Could it have been a bear? Sure, but the way the formation of the feces is what intrigued me, because bear usually looked like a giant Hershey kiss of crap, just big plops. This was like a human-like log, and it was all blueberries. And it was towards the end of winter. There would not be any blueberries around, which made me think, maybe whatever it was knew how to store. Maybe it would collect during the peak seasons, and it knew how to store berries in certain areas. Maybe it kept it like people did back in the day, where they would have like cold storage over creeks or root cellars and stuff. Mm-hmm. Maybe it knew that, if it stored it in a cold area, they'd last longer. And they're probably, their stomachs are probably more capable of handling, rotted things and different sort of bacteria and molds and whatnot. But I'm telling you, it was a log of blueberries. I found tracks. You and I went out that one time. I took you back to the spot where I found my first track. About 50 yards, maybe, not even 25 yards away from that track, we found another one that was about 3/4 of the size. Very definitive. You could definitely see the big toe and the top right there. There you go. There you go. And that's a size 13 boot that I'm wearing. That's my foot. Chad actually found that track. So could it have been an overstep by a bear? Absolutely. Could it have been a juvenile Bigfoot? Could have been. The track is just, you know what I mean? It's shaped just so well. And, because everybody's like, oh, it's not big enough. It's got to be a bear. Well, yeah, it probably was a bear. My first instinct would say that too. Like, well, yeah, it's most likely a bear. It probably was. But if it wasn't, and people say, oh, well, it's not big enough. Well, Bigfoot aren't born 10 feet tall with 20-some inch footprints. You know what I mean? They got to start small. So who's to say it wasn't a juvenile?
Yeah, and when I found that one, it was funny because Les was actually taking me out to show me where he had found, when he was out ATV riding and had come across that first track out there. And it was weird because, we're out there and I'm like, I kind of looked off into the woods, to the right of where the trail is. And as I'm looking, I see this like stone circle basically of just big glacial stones sitting out the ground. So I'm like,
Big.
Hey man, I just really want to check that out real quick. And I walk in so far. And of course, I have flip-flops on. This is when my genius esteemed colleague always yells to me, hey, don't forget, if a rattlesnake's rattle gets wet, it doesn't make noise. And we have rattlesnakes in PA.
Oh, yeah.
So I, of course, thank him for reminding me of that. Like, I don't know there's not snakes in the woods. But the way I was talking to him was through some laurel, a little bit of a laurel thicket. So I actually had to like bend over at the waist and kind of cock my head on an angle to look over to where he was so I could see him to talk to him. And I'm standing there and I'm talking to him and I'm, yelling to him. And all of a sudden I just happen to look down at my feet and I'm straddling that print. Wasn't looking for a print. I straddled over top of it by luck. It just happened to be where I could see over to where Les was and kind of, communicate with him. And I'm like, Les, you got to come here. And he's like, what? I'm like, just come here. You got to see this. So he comes over, he looks, he's like, wow, that could possibly be a bear, but let's, take a look at it. I mean, it was indented pretty hard into the ground. I mean, you and I were both, big guys.
Well, I was 310 pounds at the time that we took this picture, and that's my foot right next to it, and I could not make an indentation.
Yeah, I mean, we were jumping on the ground, like jumping up and coming down, trying to see if we could leave an indent. I mean, we couldn't even crack the surface, really. No, yeah, could that have been left when it was wet back in there? Yeah, sure. It gives it something.
Yeah, we did. It was shortly after we had heavy rain, so that, and then a lot of that was, it was all underneath pine trees, so a lot of it was, pine needles, decomposing leaves and whatnot. So if that had absorbed a lot of water, it's going to be like a sponge, and when you walk over top of that, it's just going to squish right down and dry it up. But again, the ironic part, and it seems to be so frequent, it was one track.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was one track in that area, but it was almost like I said, because to look where Les was, which was right around the area where where the washout and his track was, for something to navigate to get across that trail, it would have had to go, like I said, I had to look under laurel bushes to talk to Les, through the bottoms of them. It would have had to go around there and cross right in the same area where Les had originally, had spotted that trail and that tracking in there. We've combed that area pretty well. We put some cams up over the years and stuff like that. And, we've never seen anything, but as far as I know, all the footage that we have in that area, we don't have any footage of a bear. No, there's not.
One time I had the camera set up, and I think I was trying to get the video to you, but for whatever reason, it wasn't sending. I think it was too big or something like that. But there were one of the videos that I have, something triggered the camera trap, and it was in there. There's a lot of roads that you could drive a car on, but I mean they're not. I wouldn't. But I'm just saying the trail that's back behind you is groomed enough that it's a wide road, and there's a point where it goes into a bend and it turns off and it creates a big open area. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to put a cam up over here pointing into that open area. So if anything is using these trails as a migratory route, you're going to get a beautiful picture of it with nothing to interfere. So I have the camera pointed in the open spot. The video is triggered, and you hear something with heavy footfall walking around, and you could hear like a. So immediately I thought of bear, because you know how the bear have that real throaty as they walk, but it was just the way it was stepping sounded bipedal. It was like a it wasn't like a where it's foot over foot over. You know what I mean? It was very 1 2 1 2, and it was just like a real. I can't even replicate it. It was like a. I can't even do it. It was so throaty.
Yeah.
So that was the only thing that I got on a trail cam that I thought, oh wow, that's kind of neat. Everything else was fucking it's just garbage. But I'm bad. But again, that was some pieces of a big, like, this area was so active. And I had even had my friend across the street who's an enthusiast come over, and he and I were back in that same area. I was showing him where we found those tracks, and we heard a noise. It was a real high pitch, like a just a really weird, like, odd noise, and it was distant. It was faint. And I said, "Oh, I bet you it's a truck coming down the mountain," because we had a lot of. There's on the other side of that hill, or on the other side of the mountain. There's a quarry. And I thought, oh, it's a truck from the quarry, and the brakes come, coming up. Yeah. And we heard that. And the truck brakes were very loud and had a distinct sound. This thing was like its pitch changed. It was, I don't know. It was very weird. And he heard it. I heard it. I captured a little bit of it on my cell phone, but it was so faint. Again, if I had the bionic ear with me, we would have been golden. I didn't have it with me. We were just kind of out on a whim. He was able to get away from his kid for a while. I was able to get away from mine. So it was kind of one of those, let's just go now. No time to prep, And we scouted all around, didn't find any physical evidence, but we both heard that. And as we went through the forest, everywhere we went, this was just far enough in the distance. Like it paralleled us, but it didn't come close enough where we could see anything, but it kept making that noise, whatever it was. And again, I'm not saying it's Bigfoot. I'm not saying any of this is. I don't know what it was. I didn't see it. All I know is I had a hard time debunking it.
Yeah.
I don't know anything that makes a noise like that. The tracks, could they have been a bear? Very likely. But just the way they were and the way they happened, it was just very odd.
Now, with the fish, did that happen again ever after that? After those four?
It was all within that 1 year.
Okay.
The first one was like November, December, and I think the last one, the koi in the big pond, was late February, March. Okay. I have the dates on the side. I don't know them off the top of my head, but it was within that 1 year. Yeah. And like I said, I was talking to Bigfoot researcher Melissa Hovey, and I talked to her about everything that had happened at that time. And she said what it sounds like is because of the interaction that I had with my kid and whatever, because it seemed like every time Lily would be out and would be making noises, we would hear stuff. And it's broad daylight. It's not like it was night. We had stuff happen at night. We had stuff happen during the day. But a lot of it focused around her. And then as she got older, didn't seem to care. And then, of course, we had Madison, but she wasn't out that much. But anyway, she had said that it sounds like it's probably a male, and that's his migratory route. And because of like I said, the whole valley is farmed. And there would be like literally you could walk through that field at any given time and get baskets full of produce that was left behind.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a lot of it rotted, but I mean, a lot of it still was, you would be able to eat some of it. Like there was squash, they had gourds, pumpkins, corn, everything.
Yeah.
Everything.
Well, I know even up in that area when we went up and we're looking around and stuff like that, we went up on that one section and it was nothing but wild blueberry and grape and stuff like that up in those areas.
Yep.
So I mean, definitely plenty of food.
Yeah, absolutely. And there was a lot of pine. I mean, some of the pine that you get vitamin C out of that. You know what I mean? You chew the bark, you chew the stems. There's a lot of things that could sustain. And like I said, you had the fishing pond. I think the thing was observing, and it knew how to get these things out.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how else would you get? I mean, these were huge, several foot long fish.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a little raccoon isn't just going to pull that thing out that outweighs it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and the thing of it is the bite. The bite pattern and stuff like that doesn't really match.
Nope, and it was the same on every single one.
Yeah, it doesn't match other animals that are native to that area, though. You know what I mean? Like, there's no claw marks, there's no tearing, there's no any of that. So, yeah, I mean, again, we're not saying it was Bigfoot, but it's more evidence that we haven't been able to really debunk and, kind of lends some credibility to the theory. And I mean, I know people in that valley where the house was that I knew from work and they freely admitted, people who had, for some reason people stayed in that valley for a long time, family generation after generation. And a lot of those people freely admitted to having seen or thought they've seen Bigfoot. Or whatever they want to call it. But I'd worked with a guy when I was working up at Hickory Hills, which is a couple miles up the road from you guys in that area, who lived actually out past the church in that valley, and never brought up Bigfoot to him a day in my life. Never mentioned Bigfoot to him, never mentioned, anything about the paranormal or anything like that. And one day we were talking, he's like, out in the valley where I live, and I had known where he lived from, traveling through there, coming to and from work. He's like, man, you got to be careful at night. He goes, I've seen some stuff out there that'll, come walking out on the road and it's a little big for you to hit. And, kind of look at it and be like, a bear? Because we worked, there were bear in the area where we worked. And he's like, bear don't walk on 2 feet.
Yeah.
So definitely people in that area have, spoken of that. And, one of the things I was actually talking to a friend of mine who's a, he's part Native American, U.S. military. And one of the things we were talking about was an area we used to hunt as kids, has, become a quote unquote, Bigfoot area. And one of the things he had mentioned, and you had just, brought up a little bit ago, was when we were out there as kids, we never thought anything of it. We were, 14, 15, 16 out there with guns, hunting on the side of a mountain, fishing in that area. And he said nowadays, the atmosphere has changed to the point of, here's a guy who's a combat veteran, has grown up on this mountain. His dad has hunted this mountain for 40 years. He taught us how to hunt on that mountain, taught us, all the stuff about the animals on that mountain, where to go to look for them at certain times of year. Even he has said the atmosphere on the mountain has changed to the point of feeling like you're not alone when you're out there. And there are sections, trails that most people would never go on that him and I have, hiked on over the years, never ever felt like something, was wrong or out of place.
Is that
But he's
like the Tumbling Run area?
yes, actually it is.
There's actually lots of reports up there.
Yeah, he's actually volunteered to go out with us. And I would definitely ask him to come with because he knows that mountain better than I do.
Yep.
His dad knows it better than both of us combined.
You said he's Native American, right? Or
Yes.
part Native American?
Part Native American.
Don't forget that at the top of that mountain, supposedly, I still have yet to find it, even with freaking Google Maps. Supposedly, at the top of that mountain is an old Indian burial site where nothing grows on it.
That's a whole different story, and him and I can relay the story of trying to get there the one time to you.
Mm-hmm.
But it's called Hedge Cat is the area you're referring to.
Mm-hmm.
And we have never successfully made it there in all the times we've tried to go there because of just strange occurrences.
Yep.
Packs of coyotes following us.
Bear following people. I heard a lot of stories.
We didn't have a bear follow us. We made a turn on the one. I mean, there's a road that basically starts to lead you up the mountain.
Yeah.
We turned and came around the bend, and there was a black bear sitting there looking at us, like it had been waiting for us to come up that trail.
Yeah.
That was after the coyotes were following us up alongside of us on the lower side of the trail. We make the bend. We have shotguns with us. We look up, and there's this black bear sitting on the road just looking down at us. And we're like, okay, we're going to back up and start heading back down the mountain. If this thing follows us, we have like 20 gauge shotguns with us. We're not going to do much to it.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's basically, said over the years, the atmosphere has definitely changed. And it's definitely something, I'd like to look into eventually, tracking up there. Because like I said, I spent from the time I was 13 until I was 18, I spent pretty much every afternoon, evening, and summer and winter running around on that mountain.
Right.
And, definitely would like to experience it for myself just to see what he's talking about.
I've been down there a few times. I know there was a report that came into the PBS about, I guess, two people were walking along, because how the bike trail parallels 61 that goes, and it goes right up to the Tumbling Run Reservoir. People were walking along that. Well, it used to be a railroad bed, a railroad track, and it turned into a bike trail.
Yeah, that would go up to the old roundhouse, which was torn down.
Yes.
Back in the late 90s.
Yeah. Well, along that trail, people saw two Bigfoot in the bush alongside, and as they approached, they went up into the mountain. So there's a lot of not only Bigfoot, but supposedly there's a reservoir monster, like a lake monster, in the reservoir at Tumbling Run. There's the Indian burial ground with the phantom animals that supposedly protect it and try and scare you off before you get to it. There's a lot of odd history. And then there's the Tumbling Run Road. When you go out past the reservoir, supposedly you get chased by a ghost vehicle that tries to run you off the road. It gets close, then, and right when you think it's going to hit you, it disappears. Then there's the vanishing house, that supposedly there's a house that's stuck in some kind of a time warp or a parallel warp that when it presents itself, those who submit to curiosity go up, they go in it, they check it out, then it disappears, and supposedly you're lost in this parallel warp. There's all kinds of odd stories about the Tumbling Run area.
There used to be hotels and all right up there.
Yeah, because they used to be, because of the reservoir, they'd go up and drink the waters and swim and all that stuff.
Yeah, there used to be a whole section of hotels and stuff on the water up there on the upper part of the reservoir. You can still see the old foundations and stuff like that are still up there.
We should go up there with metal detectors and see what we could find.
Oh yeah, I'd definitely do that. I would definitely like to hike up there. Like I said, I've spent a lot of time there as a kid and stuff, and for my friend who I've known since I was 13. And like I said, we used to hunt together, fish together. You know, for him to tell me that he feels the atmosphere has changed over the years, like that he feels like something's following him or watching him.
Mm-hmm.
It's somebody I definitely, have a lot of respect for and feel is credible to at least examine what's going on up there.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, that's, just some of the stuff over the years, things change. Mountains are connected, things move, things are pushed from areas,
Mm-hmm.
So is something maybe, moved into that area? Possibility, if they are migratory or just territorial, and, there's been a lot of construction and building and growth in those areas.
Yeah. Well, buddy, it is, we've been on the air for almost 2.5 hours. We talked about personal experiences, and I could spend another 5 hours talking about local legend stories and things that you and I have encountered. So I think what we should do is probably end the show. And I'd like to end the show by saying to all of our listeners out there, or should I just say to Leslie, because so far she's the only person who's commented at all. What I'd like to say is, anybody out there, I don't care where you are, but I'm very curious to see, because local people, I've had so many stories locally. Actually, I have a story from a family member, an extended family member on Leslie's side. She told me the one time she was up in the mountaintop. She worked in an industrial park up in Mountaintop. I can't remember the name of it, but it's up near Mountaintop. She was leaving. She was working, I think, second shift. She was leaving to take a lunch break, and it was at night. When she was leaving the parking lot, across the way was a field. And she said as she approached and she was starting to turn, and the headlights kind of panned across the field, she saw a large white creature, bipedal, run across the field into the woods. And she said the way it ran, she said it could have been a person in a suit, but the way it was so fast, she didn't think it was a person. She also told me about another person in, I want to say, the Cunningham Valley, that has a lot of odd activity happening on their property, from Bigfoot to like elves or gnomes or something to extraterrestrial. So much stuff. And supposedly this guy's got a lot of stuff on video and trail cams. I've yet to meet with him. I've extended my information. I was not given a name or a contact. Otherwise I would have contacted him. But I've told people, here's my information, have them contact me. I've yet to hear. Hopefully I hear something. I had asked, was the guy on drugs, and supposedly he's super clean. Lots of interesting information. So my point here is, I'm putting the word out to all our listeners and everybody out there in Facebook land. If you know of any stories or have any experiences of your own, we'd love to hear about them. You could private message us on Facebook, get in contact with us any way you can. Let us know your story, because I'd like to do a show about just people's encounters and people's stories. And it doesn't have to be about Bigfoot. It could be with ghosts. It could be with anything. Extraterrestrial. This show is all about the unknown. And we have a lot of shows coming up throughout the year that we want to share with you guys about all different kind of creatures, aliens, ghosts, you name it, we're going to talk about it. And we hope you enjoy them. And like I said, we'd like to hear from you guys. We'd like to know what you like and what you don't like about the show. Anything we could do to improve. Your feedback is important to us. So on that, I'm Les Sincavage with the Xplorers, Seekers of the Truth, signing out. Chad, you want to say some words, buddy?
Yeah, I just, would like to thank you, Les, for, co-hosting the show with me, and
No
like
problem.
to thank the audience for, coming along on this trip. You can reach us at, on Twitter at Xplorers Group, or on Facebook. Check out our videos on YouTube. And just to give you a sneak peek of next week's program, Poltergeist.
Mm.
They're here.
God is in his holy temple.
We're going to discuss the actual phenomena associated with poltergeist. We're going to look at some historical studies that were done on the occurrences during these activities, some of the history. Might cover one or two of the more important cases over the years. So I just want to thank you guys again. Thank you, Les.
No, thank you.
Till next week. See you guys later.
See you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye.